The vast chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as the human delegation entered. Ambassador James Miller walked with his shoulders back and head high, trying not to appear overwhelmed by the 100 alien species watching him from their curved seats. Behind him marched 4 security officers in crisp blue uniforms, their holstered pistols and rifles drawing curious glances and barely concealed smirks from the assembled delegates. "Representatives of Earth, we welcome you to the Galactic Council," announced the speaker, a tall being with iridescent skin who stood at the central podium. The speaker's translator device converted their melodic speech into English. "Though we must express surprise at your protective measures." Miller nodded politely. "Thank you for your welcome. Standard diplomatic protocol on Earth includes security personnel." A ripple of what could only be described as laughter moved through the chamber. Many delegates leaned to whisper to their neighbors, pointing at the human guards. "Ambassador Miller," said a delegate from the front row, a 6-limbed creature with compound eyes that reflected the chamber's blue light. "I am Representative Dole of the Meridian Collective. We mean no disrespect, but your weapons are quaint. Projectile firearms. The Council hasn't seen such devices except in historical archives." Miller's security chief, Lieutenant Tom Parker, stiffened beside him, but remained silent. "We use what works for us," Miller replied evenly. The speaker gestured with 4 elongated fingers. "Of course, all species develop at their own pace. The Council categorizes Earth as a Class 4 civilization, newly spacefaring but still developing. Your observer status reflects this classification." A holographic display activated in the center of the chamber, showing images of various weapons. Elegant rifles that emitted beams of light, small devices that could apparently disrupt neural patterns, and spheres that created localized gravity distortions. "Modern defense relies on energy manipulation," explained a new voice. A reptilian delegate had risen from his seat. "I am General Kraz of the Duraxian Empire. Even our youngest colonies abandoned physical projectiles 10,000 years ago." Parker leaned slightly toward Miller. "They're showing offs, sir," he whispered. Miller nodded subtly. "Thank you for the educational display," he said to the Council. "Earth looks forward to learning from the gathered wisdom here." "Yes, much to learn," said General Kraz, his scaled lips pulling back to reveal pointed teeth in what might have been a smile. "The Duraxian Empire has particular interest in your sector. Perhaps we could discuss protective arrangements for your developing world." Miller noticed how several delegates shifted uncomfortably at Kraz's words. "Earth manages its own protection, but we appreciate the offer," Miller replied carefully. The rest of the introduction ceremony proceeded with formal welcomes from the major powers. Miller noted the subtle hierarchies at play, how some species received respectful silence, while others garnered merely polite acknowledgement. Throughout it all, the human security team remained the subject of curious glances and occasional muted laughter. As they were escorted to their assigned quarters afterward, Parker finally spoke openly. "They think we're jokes, sir." Miller watched the passing aliens in the corridor, noting their advanced technology and confident bearing. "Let them think what they want, Lieutenant. I noticed something interesting in there." "What's that, sir?" "When that Duraxian general mentioned their interest in our sector, the Telari representative, the one with the silver skin, looked alarmed. There's more happening here than a simple welcome ceremony." Parker nodded, his hand unconsciously touching his holstered pistol. "Should we report back to Earth?" "Yes," Miller said quietly as they reached their quarters. "And tell the team to keep their weapons ready but discreet. I have a feeling our primitive firearms might not seem so funny soon enough." Neither of them noticed the small surveillance device in the corner of the hallway, its lens focusing briefly on the holstered human weapons before transmitting data to somewhere deep within the station. 3 days into their stay at the Galactic Council Station, Lieutenant Parker couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The curved hallways and strange gravity made him uneasy, but it was the dismissive looks from alien security forces that truly bothered him. Testing complete, sir, reported Officer Wilson, joining Parker in the small maintenance area they had discovered on Level 7. All our weapons are functioning normally. Parker nodded, holstering his sidearm. Good. The ambassador was right to be concerned. They had been conducting discrete tests after Miller shared intelligence from his meetings. Something wasn't adding up about the Duraxian Empire's sudden interest in Earth's sector. Interesting thing, Wilson added, lowering his voice. I saw some of the Pellerin guards testing their energy rifles down here yesterday. They couldn't get them to fire properly. Some kind of interference. Parker raised an eyebrow. But our guns work fine. Yes, sir. Simple mechanics don't seem affected. The two men made their way back toward the human quarters, passing groups of various aliens who barely acknowledged them. Most species on the station stood at least a head taller than humans, with the exception of the small furry Minerans who scurried about handling administrative tasks. Lieutenant Parker called a voice from a shadowed alcove. Parker tensed, his hand moving instinctively toward his weapon. From the darkness emerged a slender figure with metallic silver skin that seemed to ripple like water. Parker recognized the being as the Talari representative he had seen during the welcoming ceremony. I am Counselor Verrill, the alien said in a soft, melodic voice. We must speak privately. About the Duraxians. Parker glanced at Wilson, then nodded. Officer, continue to our quarters and inform the ambassador I'll be delayed. Once Wilson had gone, Verrill led Parker to a small observation deck overlooking the vast space outside the station. Stars glittered against the blackness, making Parker momentarily homesick for Earth's night sky. Your species is in danger, Verrill said without preamble. The Duraxians have been expanding aggressively for centuries, but the Council refuses to acknowledge it. Why tell me this? Parker asked carefully. Because I have seen this pattern before. My homeworld was on their border once. Now it is a mining colony in their territory. Verrill's silver skin dimmed slightly. The Council is bound by ancient treaties and political maneuvering. They will not help you. Parker studied the alien. And why would the Duraxians target Earth specifically? We're just one planet. Your location is strategic, but more importantly, you are unknown. The Duraxians select targets they believe cannot defend themselves. Verrill's eyes, like pools of liquid mercury, fixed on Parker's holstered gun. They have never encountered your type of weapons before. Our primitive firearms, Parker said with a hint of bitterness. Yes. The Council laughs, but they do not understand. Verrill moved closer. The station is equipped with energy-dampening fields for security. In case of conflict, these fields activate automatically. Parker's eyes widened as he understood. And energy weapons would be affected, but not our kinetic weapons. Precisely. The Duraxians know this. That is why. Verrill suddenly stiffened, looking past Parker. Following the alien's gaze, Parker saw a Duraxian officer watching them from the corridor entrance. This conversation never happened, Verrill whispered, skin shifting to a darker shade. But you should know, the dampening fields also affect communications. If they are activated, you will be cut off from your planet. As the Talari glided away, Parker stood alone on the observation deck, the weight of this new information settling heavily on his shoulders. Through the viewport, he could see a Duraxian warship docking at the station. Back in the human quarters, Ambassador Miller was reviewing station schematics when Parker entered. Sir, Parker said quietly, I think we need to prepare for the worst. Miller looked up, his expression grim. I was afraid you'd say that. Our request for a formal security review was denied by the Council an hour ago. The Duraxians are planning something, Parker said. And I think our joke weapons might be the only advantage we have. The Council chamber hummed with tension as Ambassador Miller took his position at the speaker's podium. All 5 human security personnel stood at the back of the room, eyes watchful. Miller had insisted on their presence despite protests from several Council members. Esteemed representatives, Miller began, his voice steady. Earth requests the Council's immediate attention regarding Duraxian fleet movements in our sector. Before he could continue, General Kraz rose from his seat, scales gleaming under the chamber's lights. The human exaggerates. Our vessels conduct routine patrols. Routine patrols don't include 7 warships approaching a non-aligned world. Miller countered, activating a holographic display showing the data Earth's long-range scanners had captured. These movements match known Duraxian invasion patterns documented in historical archives. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The speaker raised all 4 hands for silence. Ambassador Miller, these are serious accusations against a founding member of the Council, the speaker admonished. The Duraxian Empire has rights to patrol sectors adjacent to their territory. Miller's jaw tightened. Earth's sector was declared neutral space in our acceptance agreement. Perhaps the primitives are confused about galactic boundaries, Kraz said, drawing chuckles from his allies. Their understanding of space is as basic as their weapons. Lieutenant Parker watched from the back as Miller maintained his composure, though the ambassador's knuckles whitened as he gripped the podium. We request Council intervention before this becomes a conflict, Miller pressed. The vote took less than 20 minutes. By an overwhelming majority, the Council declined to intervene, citing insufficient evidence and non-interference in territorial disputes. As the chamber emptied, Councillor Verrill approached the human delegation, silver skin dimmed to a matte gray. I voted in your favor, the Talari said quietly, but I am one voice among many. Thank you for trying, Miller replied, but now we must prepare for what comes next. Parker stepped forward. Sir, we should return to our quarters immediately. The ambassador nodded, noting the increased Duraxian presence in the corridors as they made their way back. Their quarters had become a makeshift command center, with communication equipment linked to Earth and improvised defensive plans drawn up. Officer Wilson met them at the door, face grim. Sir, we've lost contact with Earth. Miller cursed under his breath, already jamming our signals. They're moving faster than expected. There's more, Wilson continued. I was checking the maintenance shafts as you ordered. There are Duraxian technicians installing devices throughout the station. They look like the same technology as the energy dampening fields, but modified. Parker turned to the ambassador. This confirms Verrill's warning. They're preparing to take the station. Miller nodded grimly. And with the dampening fields active, the Council's security forces will be defenseless, while the Duraxians will likely have countermeasures for their own weapons. While we'll still have functioning guns, Parker finished. They never took us seriously enough to consider us a threat. A sharp knock at their door silenced the room. Parker drew his sidearm and motioned for Wilson to check the viewer. Station security, Wilson reported. 6 officers, mixed species. Miller straightened his jacket. Let them in. A tall mantis-like being entered first, flanked by officers from various species. Ambassador Miller, by order of Station Command, your delegation is confined to quarters until further notice. On what grounds? Miller demanded. Your protection. The security chief replied without emotion. We have received credible threats against your delegation. You will remain here until the situation resolves. You mean until the Duraxians finish whatever they're planning, Parker said. The security chief's compound eyes shifted. Your communication system will be disabled as a precaution. This is standard procedure. After the security team departed, locking the door from outside, Miller turned to his team. They're isolating us, he said quietly. Parker, how much time do we have? The lieutenant checked his weapon. Based on Wilson's report of those installations, less than 12 hours before they make their move. Miller looked at each member of his team. Prepare every weapon we have. When this starts, we'll likely be the only ones on this station with functioning firearms. And then? Asked Wilson. Then, Miller said, the Council will learn exactly why humans survived their violent history. The lights flickered 3 times before plunging the station into darkness. Emergency power activated seconds later, bathing the corridors in an eerie red glow. In the human quarters, Ambassador Miller and his team were already in motion. "That's it," Parker said, checking his watch, exactly when Wilson predicted they'd make their move. Miller nodded, strapping on a tactical vest they had smuggled in with their diplomatic luggage. Status of the door lock. Officer Davis stepped back from the control panel he had been working on. Bypassed. They never considered that we might use mechanical override instead of electronic. Typical, Parker muttered, distributing weapons to the team. Everyone remembers the plan. Our priority is reaching the civilian quarters. The council members will be there, supposedly under protection. Miller checked his sidearm, a standard-issue 9mm pistol that now felt like the most advanced technology on the station. "Let's move. And remember, we're likely the only ones with functioning weapons." The corridor outside was deserted. In the distance, they heard shouting and the distinctive whine of energy weapons attempting to discharge, followed by silence. Parker took point, leading them through service passages Wilson had mapped during his explorations. They encountered their first Duraxians at a junction leading to the main habitat ring. Two scaled soldiers were forcing open a door, their energy rifles apparently useless. "Halt!" Parker called out, his pistol aimed steadily. The Duraxians turned, eyes widening at the sight of armed humans. One reached for a secondary weapon. Parker fired twice. The sound echoed through the corridor like thunder, something the station had never heard before. Both Duraxians fell, dark fluid spreading beneath them. "By the void," whispered Davis. Their personal shields didn't activate. "They're designed to stop energy weapons," Miller replied, kneeling to check the fallen soldiers. "Not physical projectiles. No one uses these anymore except us." As they proceeded deeper into the station, they witnessed chaos. Aliens of various species huddled in corners while Duraxian troops moved through areas with military precision, using physical restraints where their weapons failed. Station security forces lay subdued, their advanced weapons rendered useless. "Look there," Wilson pointed through a viewport into a large chamber. Below them, a group of council members stood surrounded by Duraxian guards. General Kraz paced before them, clearly delivering some kind of speech. Among the captives, Miller recognized the speaker and Councilor Verrill. "They've taken the council hostage," Miller said. "This was never just about Earth. They're staging a coup." A sudden explosion rocked the station, throwing them against the wall. Through another viewport, they saw a Duraxian warship firing on one of the station's docking bays. "They're destroying escape vessels," Parker realized, trapping everyone inside. The team pushed forward, encountering scattered resistance. Each time, the sound of gunfire, something most species on the station had never heard outside of historical records, sent shock through the Duraxian forces. Their shields, designed to disperse energy, did nothing against solid bullets. They reached the civilian habitat section to find dozens of aliens from various species crowded together, guarded by 4 Duraxian soldiers. Without hesitation, the human team opened fire. The guards fell before they could even draw their backup weapons. The civilians stared in shock at their human rescuers and the fallen Duraxians. A tall, blue-skinned being stepped forward. How are your weapons working?" Parker ejected a spent magazine and loaded a fresh one. Gunpowder, lead, and mechanical action. No energy to dampen. Miller addressed the stunned crowd. "We're securing this section. Anyone with medical training, please help the injured. Everyone else, stay back from the entrances." From somewhere deeper in the station, alarm klaxons began to sound. A voice echoed through the emergency system. General Kraz, speaking in the common language. "Attention all beings. The station is now under Duraxian protection. Resistance is futile and punishable by vacuum exposure." The message repeated, but was drowned out by a new sound, the sharp crack of human firearms as another group of Duraxian soldiers discovered that the primitive species they had mocked was now the most dangerous force on the station. "They're not laughing anymore," Parker said grimly. checking his ammunition. The central hub of the station had become an unlikely fortress. Furniture, equipment, and anything solid had been pushed into defensive barricades, creating a protected area where nearly 40 council delegates and over 100 civilian staff huddled. At each entrance point, a human stood guard with their primitive weapon at the ready. Ambassador Miller moved between groups of aliens, offering reassurance, while Lieutenant Parker coordinated their defense. The humans had managed to rescue several high-ranking council members during their push to the central hub, including the Speaker and 3 senior representatives. "They are coming again," warned a small Miniran technician who had volunteered to monitor the corridor sensors. 20 Duraxian soldiers, approaching from the Eastern Passage. Parker nodded grimly. "Wilson Davis with me. Ambassador, keep everyone back." The 3 humans took positions behind their makeshift barricade, weapons trained on the sealed doorway. When it slid open, they held their fire until the first Duraxians entered, then squeezed their triggers in a coordinated volley. The sound of gunfire, still shocking to alien ears, filled the chamber. Duraxian soldiers fell, their advanced armor useless against the physical projectiles. Those who survived the initial volley retreated, dragging their wounded. "That's the 3rd attack they've tried," Wilson said, reloading his rifle. "They keep expecting different results." "They don't understand," Parker replied. "Their entire military doctrine is built around energy weapons and shields." Behind them, the gathered council members watched with a mixture of fear and fascination. The Speaker approached Miller, multifaceted eyes blinking rapidly. "Ambassador, I must understand," the Speaker said. "How are your weapons functioning when all others fail?" Miller gestured to Parker, who pulled a bullet from his pocket and held it up for the aliens to see. "This is a bullet," Parker explained. "Inside is gunpowder, a chemical propellant. When struck by the firing pin, it creates an explosion that drives this metal projectile forward. No electronics, no energy cells, no field generators. But such weapons are obsolete," said a Pellerin counselor. "We abandoned them thousands of years ago." "Sometimes the old ways work when the new ways fail," Miller said simply. "Your energy-dampening fields can't stop chemistry and physics." Counselor Verrill moved forward, silver skin reflecting the emergency lights. The Duraxians knew this would happen. They planned to use the station's own security systems against us, but they never considered the humans. A small crowd had gathered around Parker as he continued explaining human firearms. "Your species still kill each other with these?" asked one horrified delegate. "We try not to," Parker said honestly. "But we understand something I think the galaxy forgot. True security means being prepared for when technology fails." The Miniran technician squeaked in alarm. "They're approaching again. Many more this time." Miller addressed the gathered aliens. "We need your help. We have the weapons, but you know this station. Are there systems we can access manually? Ways to seal sections or access secure areas?" After a moment of hesitation, several aliens stepped forward. A tall, tentacled engineer spoke first. "The life support controls can be manually operated from a maintenance hub 1 level below us. The station's internal communication system has mechanical backups," added a 4-armed technician. "Designed for catastrophic power failure." A new sense of purpose spread through the group as aliens began offering knowledge that could help. Miller watched with satisfaction as Parker organized them into teams, each with specific tasks and a human escort for protection. "Ambassador," the Speaker said quietly, "the Council dismissed your species as primitive. We were wrong." Miller checked his pistol. "With respect, Speaker, survival isn't about having the most advanced technology. It's about adapting to changing circumstances." A loud explosion rocked the corridor outside. Smoke billowed through a damaged section of the door. "They're breaking through," shouted Davis from his position. Parker moved to the front line, rifle ready. "Everyone get back. This is going to get loud." As the door began to give way, the humans took aim. Behind them, for the first time, stood aliens armed with makeshift weapons, pipes, tools, anything that could serve as a physical weapon. The galaxy was about to learn another lesson from Earth. When backed into a corner, humans didn't just fight. They inspired others to fight alongside them. "We can't just keep defending," Parker said, wiping sweat from his brow. "Each attack gets stronger. We need to take the fight to them." 6 hours had passed since the humans established their defensive position. They had repelled 4 major Duraxian assaults, but ammunition was running low and fatigue was setting in. Ambassador Miller nodded grimly. "Agreed. What's our target?" The central hub had transformed. What began as a desperate last stand had evolved into an organized resistance. Aliens of various species worked alongside humans, having overcome their initial shock at the violence. A holographic map of the station hovered above a makeshift command table, with key areas marked. "The primary control center," Parker pointed. "According to the speaker, that's where General Kraz is coordinating from. If we take it, we can deactivate the energy dampening fields." The speaker, standing nearby, raised all 4 hands. "The path will be heavily guarded. Even with your functional weapons, breaking through would be nearly impossible." "That's why we won't go through the main corridors," Miller replied, looking to a small group of station maintenance workers. "You said there are service tunnels that run throughout the station." A spindly Acridian engineer chittered in agreement. "Maintenance shafts connect all major sections. Duraxians too large to access most of them. But dangerous. No life support in many sections." "That's a risk we'll have to take," Parker said. He laid out his remaining ammunition on the table, less than half of what they started with. "We need volunteers who can move quietly and follow instructions." To everyone's surprise, Counselor Verrill stepped forward. "I will go. My species can move silently when needed." Others followed. A Miniran technician familiar with the maintenance systems, 2 Acridian engineers, and a bulky Pellerin security officer who had once served on the station's protection detail. 5 of us, Parker counted, plus 3 humans. "Ambassador, you need to stay here and coordinate." Miller looked like he wanted to argue, but nodded instead. "The rest of the team will hold this position with our alien allies." The next hour was spent teaching their alien volunteers basic combat movements and how to assist the humans in combat without getting in the way. The Pellerin, named Tux, proved particularly adaptable. Earth military has similar movements to Pellerin Guard, Tux observed while practicing with a metal pipe. Different weapons, same principles. Parker showed him how to move while staying behind a human shooter. "Just remember, when we engage, stay clear of our firing lines. These bullets will go through you just as easily as through a Duraxian." As they prepared to depart, Miller addressed the group. "The station's future depends on this mission. If you succeed, we can restore communications and call for help. If you fail..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. The entrance to the maintenance shaft was hidden behind a panel in the food preparation area. One by one, the strike team slipped inside. Parker led, followed by Wilson and Davis, with their alien allies spaced between them. The tunnels were cramped and dusty. In some sections, they had to crawl on hands and knees. The Miniran, named Pip, navigated expertly, chittering quietly at each junction to indicate their path. They had covered nearly half the distance to the command center when Pip froze, whiskers twitching. "Duraxians," the small alien whispered. "In junction ahead. Setting up something." Parker crept forward and peered around the corner. 3 Duraxian technicians were installing devices similar to the ones Wilson had reported earlier. "More dampening field generators," Parker whispered. "They're reinforcing their control." He turned to his team. "We take them quietly if possible." With hand signals, Parker directed Wilson to circle around through an adjacent tunnel. Verrill moved silently beside him. Silver skin dimmed to near blackness. When they were in position, Parker gave the signal. The attack was swift and nearly silent. Wilson and Parker emerged simultaneously, firearms equipped with improvised silencers made from station materials. 2 Duraxians fell before they could react. The third reached for a weapon, but Verrill moved with surprising speed, a silver blur that tackled the alien to the ground. Tuck stepped forward and delivered a powerful blow with his pipe, ending the struggle. 3 less to worry about, Parker said, examining the devices the Duraxians had been installing. And now we know how to disable these. They continued their advance, disabling 2 more dampening field generators along the way. With each small victory, their alien allies grew more confident. As they approached the final stretch to the command center, Davis checked his weapon. "Last magazine," he reported quietly. Parker nodded. "Make every shot count. We won't get a second chance at this." The command center doors slid open with a hydraulic hiss as Parker's team breached the final barrier. The 8 fighters, 3 humans, and 5 aliens who had never imagined themselves in combat, moved as a coordinated unit. The Duraxian guards inside turned in shock, reaching for weapons that would not function against the human threat. "Surrender the station," Parker demanded, his rifle trained on General Kraz, who stood by the main control console. The Duraxian general's scales darkened with rage. "Primitive creatures, you cannot possibly understand what you're interfering with." "We understand tyranny well enough," Parker replied. Around him, Wilson and Davis secured the remaining guards while their alien allies moved to the control systems. Kraz's upper lip curled into a snarl. "Your species is barely space-capable. You think a few projectile weapons make you our equals." "Not our equals," Ambassador Miller's voice came through the communication system Pip had managed to activate. "Today, we proved we're your betters." The Miniran technician worked feverishly at the control panel, energy dampening fields disengaging station-wide. Pip announced, whiskers twitching with excitement. Throughout the station, lights flickered and returned to full brightness. Systems came back online as the Duraxian sabotage was reversed. In various sectors, Council security forces found their weapons functioning again, quickly overwhelming the remaining Duraxian troops. Councillor Verrill stepped toward General Kraz, silver skin now glowing with intensity. "The Council will convene immediately to address your unprovoked attack. The Duraxian Empire will answer for this." "You fools," Kraz hissed. "This station was just the beginning. Our fleet still surrounds." An alarm cut him off as the main view screen activated, showing space outside the station, where a Duraxian battle fleet had been positioned. Now floated debris and disabled vessels. 3 ships of unfamiliar design moved among them. "Earth vessels," Miller's voice explained. "We may be new to the galactic community, but we've been preparing defenses since first contact. When communications were cut, they followed contingency protocols." Parker couldn't help but smile at the stunned expressions on both alien allies and Duraxian captives. "Turns out we're not the only ones who kept obsolete technology. Our ships still use radio communication, unaffected by your dampening fields." Within hours, the station was secured. In the main council chamber, an emergency session convened with Ambassador Miller given the unprecedented honor of addressing the full assembly from the central podium. "Members of the Galactic Council," Miller began, "today has been a harsh lesson for all of us. The Duraxians exploited our differences and our assumptions about one another." The speaker, standing beside Miller, raised all 4 hands for attention. "Ambassador Miller speaks truth that we must acknowledge. This council dismissed humanity as primitive because their technology followed a different path from our own. That arrogance nearly cost us everything." Miller continued, "Earth doesn't ask for special treatment. We ask only for respect and recognition that diversity of approach brings strength, not weakness." The vote that followed was unanimous. Earth was elevated to full council membership with immediate effect. Additionally, a special security committee would be formed, chaired jointly by human and Talari representatives, to develop new defensive protocols incorporating both energy and kinetic technologies. 2 weeks later, as the human delegation prepared to return to Earth with news of their new galactic standing, Lieutenant Parker stood in the council chamber observing a new installation. In a place of honor beside ancient artifacts and symbols of peace hung a simple glass case containing a human pistol and rifle. Counselor Verrill joined him, silver skin shimmering. "The inscription was my suggestion," the Talari said, indicating the plaque beneath. Parker read aloud. "Sometimes the oldest solutions solve the newest problems." A good reminder. "More than that," Verrill replied. "A new philosophy for the Council. For too long, we believed advancement meant abandoning the past. Your species showed us that true wisdom lies in remembering where we came from." As Ambassador Miller joined them, the three stood in comfortable silence before the display. "Will it last?" Parker finally asked. "This new respect?" Miller smiled. "Hard to say. But one thing's certain, nobody's laughing at human guns anymore." Beyond the station's viewports, stars glittered against the darkness, and among them, Earth's vessels stood guard alongside ships from a dozen worlds, the beginning of a new defensive alliance that would change the course of galactic history.